Say it. I eventually said it while avoiding his look. He questioned me, taking a step. I didn't have a response, or maybe I did, but I couldn't bring myself to closer. Am I making you uncomfortable? No, it's not that, I said it quickly. There were words that were not uttered and sentiments that were not recognized, and the air between us felt heated and heavy. On that particular day, the home was unusually quiet, the type of silence that causes you to become aware of the subtle hum of appliances or the distant singing of birds outside the window. I found myself sitting in the living room by alone, flicking through a magazine that I had no intention of reading. My husband, who was always obsessed with business, was once again out of town. I was not furious since this had been the usual. Nonetheless, the emptiness that I felt was a problem. This stillness served as a reminder of how monotonous my life had become and how routine had wrapped itself around me like an invisible prison. Left behind seemed harsher than normal. I checked at my phone in the hopes of receiving a text or a call, but there was nothing. I loved my spouse, or at least I told myself that I did, but over the years, something had changed. Passion had waned into comfort, and comfort had gradually transformed into apathy. The sound of a vehicle door slamming took me out of my thoughts and brought me back to reality. As I peered out the window, I saw my nephew Joshua making his way toward the home. Although he was the kid of my husband's younger brother, I felt more like a distant cousin to him due to the fact that our age gap was quite small. Joshua was in his early 20s, confident and carried a charisma that seemed to draw people, and without effort, I opened the door before he could knock. Hey, Joshua, what brings you here? I asked, masking my surprise with a smile. He grinned. Uncle told me to pick up some documents he left. Hope it's not a bad time. Not at all. Come in, I said, stepping aside as he walked in. I couldn't help but notice the ease with which he moved, the energy he brought into the room. He tossed his bag onto the couch and looked around. Nice place as always. You've got good taste, Auntie. With a grin, I dismissed the remark, saying that flattery would not be enough to get you out of jail. What documents are you searching for? He shrugged and said something about property registration paperwork. I'll check his study. As Joshua made his way to the study, I realized how different he was from my husband. Joshua was spontaneous, charming, and unapologetically confident, qualities that had long been absent in my day-to-day life. I shook the thought away, feeling foolish. He was family, but then Joshua returned with the papers, his sleeves rolled up, revealing a tattoo on his forearm I hadn't noticed before. He saw me staring and smirked. You like it? It's interesting, I replied, feeling a bit flustered. We sat and talked for a while, more than we ever had before. His stories were lively, filled with humor and adventure, a stark contrast to the monotony I had grown accustomed to. His laughter was contagious, his presence magnetic. For a brief moment, I forgot about everything: my husband, my responsibilities, the unspoken rules of propriety. In that moment, it was just Joshua and me, two people sharing a connection I couldn't quite define. Two of two, the conversation flowed effortlessly, filling the space with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Joshua leaned back on the couch, his eyes holding mine just a moment too long as he spoke. There was something about the way he listened, the way he seemed genuinely interested in every word I said. It was disarming, almost intoxicating. At one point he reached for the glass of water I had placed on the coffee table, and our hands accidentally brushed. The contact was brief, but it lingered in my mind. I pulled back, instinctively laughing it off, but I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. Joshua noticed. Are you okay? He asked, his tone casual, but his eyes searching mine. Of course, I said quickly, standing up to put some distance between us. It's just warm in here, that's all. I walked to the kitchen, busying myself with nothing in particular. I could feel his presence even from across the room, a subtle tension building that neither of us addressed. When I turned back, he was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that same easy confidence. You seem different today, he said, his voice softer now. Different how? I asked, trying to sound indifferent. I don't know, more alive. His words caught me off guard, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. There was a sincerity in his tone that made it hard to dismiss as mere flattery. I felt seen in a way I hadn't. You need to probably go, Joshua, very soon. It's not that, I said it hastily, it's just that. He crushed his eyes into mine. I didn't have a response, or maybe I did, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. I eventually said it while avoiding his look. He questioned me, taking a step closer. Am I making you uncomfortable? No, it's not that, I said it quickly. There were words that were not uttered and sentiments that were not recognized, and the air between us felt heated and heavy. He was standing close now, too close, and I could feel my resolve slipping. This isn't right, I whispered more to myself than to him. I know, he said, his voice low and steady, but it doesn't feel wrong, does it? I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment the rest of the world faded away. It was just us suspended in a moment that felt both impossible and inevitable. He reached out, his hand brushing against mine, and I didn't pull away. The room seemed to shrink around us, the distance between us disappearing as if it had never existed. My mind screamed at me to stop, to step back, to think of the consequences, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Just as the tension reached its peak, the sound of the front door opening shattered the moment. My heart leaped into my throat as Joshua and I sprang apart, both of us turning toward the sound. My nephew Ethan stood in the doorway, his expression of mixed awful confusion and suspicion. Hey, Ethan said slowly, his eyes darting between us. Am I interrupting something? No, of course not, I said, forcing a laugh that felt hollow even to me. It was almost time for Joshua to go. With a casual smile on his face, Joshua addressed Ethan and said, I was just grabbing some papers for Uncle. I didn't expect to run into you though. Joshua, to his credit, played it calm. After that, Uncle requested me to stop over and pick up the same documents, and Ethan raised his eyebrow, indicating that he was obviously not buying the nonchalance. Well, I suppose it's excellent time. As I became aware that the justification that Joshua had used to come here was now being revealed, my stomach began to churn. The fact that Ethan was there served as a glaring reminder of the boundary that I had almost violated, and the emotion of humiliation washed over me like a tsunami. I believed that there was a misunderstanding. As fast as I could, I expressed my need to reclaim control of the situation. There is no need for you to be here since Joshua already has the paperwork. Ethan did not shift his eyes, and it was somewhat humorous that he did not say that you would be here. Joshua, I don't know how you could have forgotten about it. Joshua shrugged, his easy demeanor still intact, didn't think it mattered. And I were just catching up, nothing more. The words hung in the air, innocuous on the surface, but loaded with subtext. Ethan seemed to sense it, his gaze lingering on me for a moment longer than was comfortable. Well, I'll let you two catch up, Ethan said finally, his tone clipped as he turned and walked back out the door, leaving it slightly ajar behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Joshua looked at me, his expression unreadable.